The crack of a gunshot echoed across the dusty main street of Willow Creek, Montana. But Zara Pierce never flinched, not even when the bullet buried itself in the wooden post just inches from her head. Her husband Elliott's gambling debts had finally caught up with them, and the man standing before her with a smoking revolver was determined to collect, one way or another. "Your husband owes me $800, Mrs. Pierce," said Silas Rutherford, the wealthiest and most ruthless businessman in the territory. His cold eyes swept over Zara's worn calico dress and the small cabin behind her. "And I aim to collect." It was 1876, and the promise of prosperity that had drawn so many westward after the Civil War had proven elusive for the Pierces. Elliott had been a dreamer with a weakness for cards, and now he lay inside their cabin, delirious with fever, unaware that his wife was about to pay the ultimate price for his failures. "We don't have that kind of money, Mr. Rutherford." "You know that," Zara replied, her voice steady despite the fear that threatened to choke her. At 24, she had already endured more hardship than most women twice her age, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. Rutherford holstered his gun and smiled, a gesture more terrifying than his previous threat. "Then I'll take something else instead. There's always a market for a pretty woman like you. Work off your husband's debt at my establishment in town." Zara's blood ran cold. Everyone knew what kind of establishment. Rutherford ran a saloon where women were treated as merchandise rather than human beings. "You can't do this," she whispered, but they both knew he could. In this untamed territory, Rutherford's wealth made him the law. "I'll give you until sundown to say goodbye to your husband. Then you're mine, or I'll have the sheriff seize your land and leave him to die in the street." With that, Rutherford mounted his horse and rode away, leaving Zara trembling on her porch. She had barely closed the door when she heard hoofbeats approaching again. Grabbing the shotgun from beside the door, she prepared to defend her home, but the rider who appeared was not Rutherford returning. This man was a stranger, tall and broad-shouldered, with a weathered face that spoke of years under the harsh western sun. His dark hair fell in waves beneath a well-worn Stetson, and his clothes, though dusty from the trail, were of good quality. But what caught Zara's attention most were his eyes, deep blue and startlingly kind in a face that otherwise suggested danger. "Madam," he said, tipping his hat, "name's Flynn O'Malley. I couldn't help overhearing your predicament. Might I come in for a moment?" Zara hesitated, the shotgun still half raised. "What do you want? To help, if you'll let me." His voice carried a slight Irish lilt. "I've had dealings with men like Rutherford before." Something in his steady gaze made Zara lower her weapon. Perhaps it was desperation, or perhaps some instinct told her this man could be trusted. "My husband is sick," she said, opening the door wider. "I don't have much to offer in the way of hospitality." Flynn dismounted and followed her inside. The cabin was small but clean, with simple furnishings that showed signs of careful mending. On the bed in the corner lay Elliott Pierce, his face flushed with fever, his breathing labored. "How long has he been like this?" Flynn asked, moving to the bedside. 3 days. It started as a cough, but now, Zara's composure finally broke. "And now Rutherford wants to collect on Elliott's gambling debts. He's given me until sundown too." She couldn't finish the sentence. Flynn's jaw tightened. "I heard, $800, he said." Zara nodded miserably. "We don't have even a quarter of that. Everything we had went into this land, and then Elliott started gambling, thinking he could make enough to buy better equipment for the farm." She looked around at their modest home. "It didn't work out that way." Flynn studied her for a moment, then reached into his coat and pulled out a leather pouch. "I have a proposition for you, Mrs. Pierce." "What kind of proposition?" Suspicion crept back into her voice. "I'll pay off Rutherford by both your freedom and your husband's debt. In return, I'll need a place to stay for a while and some honest work. I'm handy with tools, good with horses, and can help get your farm running properly." Zara stared at him in disbelief. "Why would you do that for strangers?" Flynn's eyes darkened momentarily. "Let's just say I have my reasons for wanting to see men like Rutherford taken down a notch." He held her gaze. "Do we have a deal?" "How do I know you're not worse than Rutherford?" Zara challenged. A small smile touched Flynn's lips. "You don't." But I'm offering you a choice, which is more than he did. Zara looked at her husband's suffering face, then back at Flynn. What choice did she really have? We have a deal, Mr. O'Malley, but understand this is still my home and I make the rules. Flynn nodded, his expression serious. I wouldn't have it any other way. When Rutherford returned at sunset, Flynn was waiting on the porch, the leather pouch in his hand and a dangerous glint in his eye. Who the hell are you? Rutherford demanded. Name's Flynn O'Malley. He tossed the pouch to Rutherford. $800. The Pierce's debt is paid in full. Rutherford weighed the pouch in his hand, eyes narrowing with suspicion. Where'd a drifter like you get this kind of money? Not all who wander are poor, Rutherford. Flynn's voice dropped to a menacing whisper. And not all debts are paid with money. Remember that. Something in Flynn's tone made Rutherford take a step back. He counted the money, nodded curtly, and mounted his horse. We're square for now. With that, he rode away, but not before casting a lingering look at Zara that promised this wasn't over. Later that evening, after they had tended to Elliott and eaten a simple meal, Zara found Flynn on the porch, staring at the stars. You didn't answer my question earlier, she said, joining him. Why are you really helping us? Flynn was silent for a long moment. I've been riding for a long time, Mrs. Pierce. Seen a lot of suffering, much of it at the hands of men who think their money gives them the right to own others. He turned to face her. Sometimes a man needs to put down roots, find a purpose beyond just surviving. Your husband's fever should break soon with proper care, but your farm needs work, and you need protection from Rutherford. I can provide both. And what do you get out of it? A sad smile crossed his face. Peace, maybe. A chance to build something good. Zara studied him in the moonlight, wondering what ghosts haunted this strange, gentle-mannered man with dangerous eyes. You can stay in the barn for now. We'll see how things go. Flynn nodded. Fair enough. Get some rest, Mrs. Pierce. Tomorrow will be a new day. As Zara walked back to the cabin, she felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time: hope. The next morning dawned clear and cool. Zara rose early, as was her habit, to find Flynn already up and working. He had repaired the broken well pump that had plagued her for weeks and was now splitting firewood with smooth, practiced strokes. Your husband's fever broke during the night, he said when he saw her. He's sleeping naturally now. Relief washed over Zara. She hurried inside to find Elliott indeed sleeping peacefully, his forehead cool to the touch. When his eyes fluttered open, he looked confused to see her anxious face. Zara, what happened? His voice was weak but clear. You've been sick, very sick, she said, helping him sip some water. But you're getting better now. Elliott's eyes widened suddenly. Rutherford, he came for the money, didn't he? Zara, I'm so sorry. I never should have. It's taken care of, she interrupted. The debt is paid. How? Elliott struggled to sit up. We don't have that kind of money. Zara hesitated, unsure how to explain Flynn's presence. We have. Help. A man named Flynn O'Malley paid Rutherford. He's staying with us for a while, working on the farm in exchange. Elliott sank back, confusion evident on his gaunt face. I don't understand. Why would a stranger do that? I'm still figuring that out myself, Zara admitted. But he seems honorable enough. Rest now. You need to regain your strength. Over the next few days, Elliott recovered slowly while Flynn transformed the neglected farm. He mended fences, repaired the leaking roof, and coaxed the stubborn plow horse into working again. Zara found herself watching him when he wasn't looking. Intrigued by the contradictions, he embodied the gentleness with which he handled animals and the obvious strength in his weathered hands. The quiet way he spoke, and the occasional haunted look that crossed his face when he thought no one was watching. One evening, as they sat on the porch after dinner, Elliott finally asked the question that had been hanging between them. Why did you really help us, O'Malley? No man parts with $800 for strangers without a reason. Flynn took a long pull from his coffee before answering. I was passing through town when I overheard Rutherford bragging about how he was going to collect from the Pierce woman. It's not the first time I've heard talk like that. His knuckles whitened around his cup. My sister was collected by a man like him back in Texas. I was just a boy then, couldn't do anything to stop it. By the time I was old enough to find her, she was gone. Silence fell after his words, heavy with shared understanding of the cruelties that flourished in these untamed territories. I'm sorry about your sister. Zara said quietly. Flynn nodded. So am I, but helping you and your husband, it's something I can do now, something that matters. Elliott extended his hand. Then we're grateful to have you, Flynn, for as long as you want to stay. As spring moved into summer, the farm began to thrive under their combined efforts. Elliott, once fully recovered, proved to be a hard worker when not seduced by the false promise of easy money at the card tables. He swore off gambling and threw himself into making the land productive, following Flynn's experienced guidance. Zara found herself blooming like the wildflowers that dotted their fields. For the first time since coming west, she felt secure, protected not just by Flynn's presence but by her own growing confidence. She had always been strong out of necessity. Now she was strong by choice. Yet beneath the surface of their harmonious arrangement, tensions were building. Zara couldn't help noticing the way Flynn looked at her sometimes, quickly averting his gaze when she caught him. And she was increasingly aware of her own response to his presence, the quickening of her pulse when their hands accidentally touched, the way she found excuses to be near him. Elliott noticed too. Though he said nothing, Zara sometimes caught him watching them with a troubled expression that made guilt twist in her stomach. She had never been unfaithful to her husband in deed or even conscious thought, but she couldn't deny the pull she felt toward Flynn. Matters came to a head in late July when Rutherford returned. Flynn had ridden into town for supplies, leaving Zara and Elliott at the farm. They were working in the vegetable garden when the sound of approaching horses made them look up. Rutherford dismounted at their fence, flanked by two rough-looking men. Well, the Pierce's little paradise," Rutherford sneered. "You think you're safe now that you've got that gunslinger watching over you?" Elliott stepped in front of Zara. "Our debt is paid, Rutherford." "You have no business here. That's where you're wrong." Rutherford's smile didn't reach his eyes. "You see, I've been doing some asking around about your friend O'Malley. Turns out there's quite a price on his head back in Wyoming. Murder, they say." Zara's heart dropped. "You're lying." "Am I?" "Ask him yourself if he comes back. Men like O'Malley don't stay in one place long, especially when their past catches up to them." Rutherford leaned forward in his saddle. "When he's gone, and he will be gone, I'll be waiting. No one humiliates me and gets away with it." After Rutherford left, Zara and Elliott retreated to the house in silence. The accusation hung between them, poisoning the air. "Do you think it's true?" Zara finally asked. "About Flynn being wanted for murder," Elliott sighed heavily. "I don't know, he's never talked much about his past." "He told us about his sister." "Yes, but there are years unaccounted for between then and now." Elliott took her hands. "Zara, I need to ask you something, and I need the truth. What are your feelings for him?" The directness of the question caught her off guard. I don't know what you mean." "Yes, you do." Elliott's voice was gentle but firm. "I see the way you look at him, the way he looks at you. I'm not blind, Zara." Tears sprang to her eyes. "Elliott, I know you haven't. You're too honorable for that, but feelings don't always follow the rules we set for them." He squeezed her hands. "I care for you deeply, Zara. You know that, but I also know that what brought us together wasn't love, it was practicality. You needed security after your parents died, and I needed a partner to help build a life out here." Zara stared at him, stunned by his candor. "Are you saying you don't love me?" "I'm saying there are different kinds of love. I love you as my dearest friend, as the woman who has stood by me even when I didn't deserve it, but I've never seen you look at me the way you look at him." Elliott's smile was sad but genuine. "You deserve happiness, Zara. Real happiness." Before she could respond, they heard a horse approaching. Flynn had returned. The conversation was suspended, but Zara's mind whirled with Elliott's words and the questions Rutherford had raised. That night, unable to sleep, Zara slipped out to the barn. She found Flynn awake, cleaning his saddle by the light of a lantern. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked, looking up from his work. "Rutherford came by today," she said without preamble. "He says you're wanted for murder in Wyoming." Flynn's hands stilled. He set down the rag he'd been using and looked at her directly. "He's right," Zara's breath caught. Despite suspecting the truth, hearing him confirm it sent a chill through her. "You killed someone?" "Yes." Flynn's voice was low. "A man named Jacob Blackwood. He owned several saloons in Cheyenne, places where women were bought and sold like cattle. He had my sister for a time." "Your sister that you told us about?" Flynn nodded. "I tracked her for years, following rumors and whispers. When I finally found where she'd been, she was already gone dead from consumption, they said, but I knew better. She'd been worked to death, passed from man to man until there was nothing left of the girl I remembered. Zara sank onto a bale of hay, her legs suddenly weak. So you killed him. I confronted him, told him who I was, who she was, and do you know what he did? Flynn's voice shook with suppressed rage. He laughed, said he couldn't be expected to remember every piece of trash that came through his establishments. So you shot him? No, Flynn's eyes met hers. I beat him to death with my bare hands. It wasn't quick and it wasn't clean, but it was justice of a sort. He stood, moving toward the barn door. I'll be gone by morning. I've put you and Elliott in enough danger. Wait, Zara stood too. Is that why you helped us? Because you saw the same thing happening again, Flynn turned back to her. Partly. But also because from the moment I saw you standing there, refusing to break even with a gun pointed at you, I knew you were someone worth fighting for. The air between them seemed to crackle with unspoken emotions. Zara knew she should leave, should go back to the house and her husband, but her feet refused to move. I don't condone what you did, she said finally, but I understand it, and I don't want you to go. I have to. Rutherford will bring trouble down on you if I stay. Rutherford will bring trouble regardless. At least with you here, we have a chance. Zara took a step closer to him. Elliott and I were talking before you came back. He knows. Flynn's expression grew guarded. Knows what? That I have feelings for you, feelings I shouldn't have. The admission cost her greatly, but once spoken, the words seemed to lift a weight from her heart. Flynn closed his eyes briefly. Zara, I can't come between you and your husband. I won't. You already have, she whispered. But it's complicated. Elliott and I, our marriage has never been. She struggled to find the words. We care for each other deeply, but it's not the kind of love I read about in books or hear in songs. Elliott knows that. He's known it longer than I have, I think. Flynn took her hands in his touch sending warmth through her entire body. What are you saying? I'm saying I need time to figure things out, to speak with Elliott properly, but I'm also saying I don't want you to leave. For a long moment they stood there, hands clasped, the future uncertain but suddenly full of possibilities. Then Flynn gently released her. I'll stay until we deal with Rutherford. After that, we'll see where we stand. His voice was rough with emotion. Go back to the house now, Zara. Morning comes early. She nodded, backing away reluctantly. At the barn door, she paused. Flynn, whatever happens, I'm glad you came into our lives. He gave her a smile that made her heart race. So am I, Zara, so am I. The next few days passed in a strange state of suspended animation. Outwardly, nothing had changed. They worked the farm together, ate meals, discussed the weather and the crops. But beneath the surface, everything was different. Zara felt as if she were standing on the edge of a cliff, knowing she would eventually have to jump but uncertain where she would land. Elliott watched her with knowing eyes but said nothing further about their interrupted conversation. Flynn maintained a careful distance, his manner respectful but reserved. The tension between the three of them built until Zara felt she might scream from the strain of it. Relief came from an unexpected quarter. A week after Rutherford's visit, a stranger rode up to their farm, a lean, hard-faced man with a tin star pinned to his vest. Marshal James Cooper, he introduced himself. I'm looking for Flynn O'Malley. Flynn stepped forward, his posture tense but his face calm. I'm O'Malley. The marshal studied him. You're wanted in Wyoming territory for the murder of Jacob Blackwood. Yes, sir, I am, Flynn answered quietly. Zara moved to stand beside Flynn, her heart pounding. Marshal, there are circumstances. Cooper held up a hand to silence her. Madam, I'm not here to arrest Mr. O'Malley, at least not for that. He pulled a folded paper from his pocket. This arrived from the territorial governor's office yesterday. Seems Mr. Blackwood had more enemies than friends. Some powerful men had daughters who went missing in his establishments. There's been an investigation, and while taking the law into your own hands isn't something the territory can officially condone. Flynn took the paper, reading it with disbelief. A pardon, conditional on your agreeing never to return to Wyoming territory, Cooper confirmed. Which brings me to why I'm really here. A man named Silas Rutherford has been making trouble in my town. Word is he's got a particular grudge against you folks. Elliott joined them, his expression cautious. Rutherford's been threatening us, yes. Well, I've got him locked up at the moment for assaulting one of the girls at his saloon, but he won't stay there long. His kind never does. The marshal gave Flynn a measuring look. I could use a deputy with your particular skills, someone who understands men like Rutherford and isn't afraid to stand against them. Flynn looked stunned. You're offering me a job as a lawman. Times are changing, O'Malley. The wild days are giving way to law and order, but we need men who have seen both sides to help with the transition. Cooper smiled grimly. Besides, a man with a price on his head one day and a pardon the next makes for an interesting deputy. People will think twice before crossing you. The offer hung in the air, a path none of them had anticipated. Flynn glanced at Zara, then at Elliott, clearly torn. It's a good offer, Elliott said suddenly. You'd be good at it. But the farm, Flynn began. The farm will be fine, Elliott assured him. You've taught us well these past months. We can manage now. Zara's heart sank. They were sending him away, making the decision for her. She opened her mouth to protest, but Elliott continued, and Zara should go with you. Silence fell, broken only by the distant call of a meadowlark. What? Zara finally managed. Elliott took her hands, his eyes kind but determined. We need to talk privately. Marshal, Flynn, would you excuse us? When they were alone in the house, Elliott led Zara to the table and sat down across from her. I meant what I said the other day, Zara. You deserve happiness, we both do. You're my husband, she protested weakly. On paper, yes, but in here, he placed a hand over his heart. We're partners, friends, we've helped each other survive, but that's not enough anymore, not for either of us. What are you saying? Elliott sighed. I'm saying I want a divorce. The word hung between them, shocking in its finality. Divorce was rare in the territories, stigmatized and difficult to obtain, but not impossible. Is it because of Flynn? Because nothing has happened, it's not because of Flynn, Elliott interrupted gently. It's because of us. Because we deserve more than what we settled for when we married. I care for you deeply, Zara, and I always will. But I've watched you come alive these past months in a way you never have with me. Tears filled Zara's eyes. And what about you? What will you do? A smile touched Elliott's lips. Remember Sarah Jenkins, the school teacher who came to town last fall, the one who lent you all those books when you were recovering? Zara recalled the pretty young woman with spectacles who had visited several times, ostensibly to check on Elliott's progress. We've been corresponding. She understands me in ways I never expected anyone to. A faint blush colored his cheeks, but I wouldn't act on it, not while we're still married. Zara sat back, amazed. All this time, she had been wrestling with guilt over her feelings for Flynn, and Elliott had been nurturing feelings of his own for someone else. So you want a divorce so you can court Sarah? I want us both to be free to pursue real happiness, Elliott corrected. The farm is doing well now. We could sell it, split the proceeds. You could go with Flynn, help him build something new. I could perhaps open that bookshop I've always talked about. It was such a practical, Elliott-like solution that Zara couldn't help laughing through her tears. You make it sound so simple. It won't be, he acknowledged. People will talk, but people always talk. The question is whether we have the courage to live our lives for ourselves rather than for them. Zara considered his words. The prospect of divorce was daunting, but the alternative, continuing in a marriage that lacked true passion while denying her feelings for Flynn, seemed suddenly unbearable. Are you sure about this? She asked. Elliott nodded. I've never been more sure of anything. When they rejoined Flynn and the marshal outside, both men looked at them expectantly. Marshal Cooper, Elliott said formally, my wife and I have decided to pursue a divorce. It's amicable, a mutual decision. Once it's final, if your offer still stands, I believe Flynn would make an excellent deputy and Zara would be free to accompany him if she wishes. Flynn looked from Elliott to Zara in disbelief. Zara, it seems my husband and I have both been keeping secrets, she said softly. He has feelings for someone else, just as I have feelings for you. Flynn shook his head. I never meant to come between, you didn't, Elliott assured him. You just helped us see what was already there, or rather, what wasn't. No one is to blame here. We're just finally being honest with ourselves and each other. Marshal Cooper cleared his throat. Well, this is unexpected, but my offer stands. The deputy position is yours whenever you want it, O'Malley, and Mrs. Pierce, or soon-to-be former Mrs. Pierce, the town could use a woman with your strength of character. We've been trying to establish a proper school, and from what I hear, you were a teacher back east before coming west. Zara hadn't mentioned her brief teaching career to anyone except Elliott. She looked at her husband questioningly. I may have written to Sarah about it, he admitted, and she may have mentioned it to the town council. For the first time in months, perhaps years, Zara felt a genuine sense of possibility opening before her. Not just freedom from Rutherford's threats or the hard-scrabble existence they'd been living, but freedom to choose her own path, to follow her heart. We'll need time, she told the marshal, to settle things here, to make sure the divorce is handled properly. Cooper nodded. Of course. The job will be waiting when you're ready. He tipped his hat and turned to go, then paused. Oh, and O'Malley, while you're waiting, maybe you could help me keep an eye on Rutherford. He'll be out of my jail soon, and I'd rather he didn't cause any more trouble for these good people. Flynn straightened, a new purpose in his stance. I'd be happy to, Marshal. As Cooper rode away, the three of them stood in an uncertain triangle, the future suddenly wide open and uncharted. I should give you two some privacy, Elliott said, moving toward the barn. Wait. Flynn stopped him with a hand on his arm. I need to say something to both of you. What you're offering, it's more than I ever expected to find when I rode into your lives. A chance at redemption, at building something meaningful. His eyes found Zara's. At love. But I need to be sure this is what you both truly want. No regrets, no looking back. Elliott smiled. No regrets, just new beginnings for all of us. Zara moved to Flynn's side, taking his hand. I want this. I want to see where this path leads us. Flynn squeezed her hand, his eyes full of promise. Then we'll walk it together. The process of untangling their lives took time. The divorce proceedings were straightforward, but slow, requiring trips to the county seat and explanations to puzzled officials unused to couples who separated without rancor or drama. The farm was sold to a young couple newly arrived from Pennsylvania, eager for the opportunity the Pierces had once sought themselves. Throughout it all, Flynn remained a steady presence, dividing his time between helping at the farm and assisting Marshal Cooper in town. His new role as unofficial deputy gave him the authority to keep Rutherford in check, though the businessman's resentment simmered dangerously beneath the surface of grudging compliance. Sarah Jenkins became a frequent visitor to the farm, her bright intellect and gentle manner a perfect complement to Elliott's thoughtful nature. Zara found that rather than feeling jealous, she was genuinely happy to see her soon-to-be ex-husband finding the connection he deserved. By the time autumn painted the hills in gold and russet, the divorce was final. Elliott had purchased a small building on Willow Creek's Main Street with plans to open his bookshop by Christmas. Sarah had accepted his proposal, their wedding planned for the spring. On their last night at the farm, Zara and Flynn walked to the creek that marked the property's boundary, the setting sun casting long shadows across the land they had tended together. Are you sad to leave? Flynn asked, watching her face in the fading light. Zara considered the question. Not sad exactly. Grateful for what this place gave us, but ready for what comes next. She turned to him. What about you? Are you ready to be a lawman instead of an outlaw? A smile touched his lips. I'm ready to build something that lasts, something good with you. He took her hands in his expression growing serious. Zara, I know we haven't known each other long, measured in months rather than years, but in that time you've become the center of my world. I've wandered most of my life searching for something I couldn't name. Now I know what it was. He dropped to one knee, still holding her hands. I was looking for you, for this feeling of coming home. Will you marry me? Tears blurred Zara's vision as she nodded. Yes, I'll marry you, Flynn O'Malley. He rose and pulled her into his arms, his kiss full of promise and passion long restrained. When they finally broke apart, breathless, the first stars were appearing in the darkening sky. We should head back, Zara said reluctantly. Tomorrow will be a busy day. As they walked hand in hand toward the farmhouse, now emptied of their belongings, Flynn asked, Do you think we'll be happy in town? It's different from life out here. Zara smiled up at him. I think home isn't a place, Flynn. It's the people you choose to share your life with. And I've chosen you." The wedding took place on a crisp October morning in Willow Creek's small church. Elliott stood as Flynn's best man, his genuine happiness for them evident in his smile. Sarah served as Zara's maid of honor, the two women having formed a friendship based on mutual respect and shared literary interests. Marshall Cooper gave Zara away, gruffly emotional at the honor she had bestowed on him. The townspeople filled the pews, curious about this unconventional couple but won over by Flynn's dedication to establishing law and order, and Zara's efforts to organize the town's first proper school. As they exchanged vows, Zara thought of the strange, winding path that had led them here, how Rutherford's cruelty had inadvertently brought Flynn into her life, how pain and uncertainty had ultimately given way to clarity and joy. The reception was held at the newly renovated schoolhouse, where Zara would begin teaching after their honeymoon. Children darted between the adults, punch was served instead of whiskey, to some grumbling from the old-timers, and music from a borrowed piano filled the air. Late in the afternoon, the door swung open to reveal Silas Rutherford. The room fell silent as he stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. Flynn moved protectively to Zara's side, his hand hovering near his gun. Rutherford surveyed the gathered crowd, his eyes finally settling on the newlyweds. For a tense moment, it seemed violence might erupt and mar the celebration. Then, unexpectedly, Rutherford nodded curtly. "Congratulations," he said, his voice carrying in the silent room. "I'll be moving on soon." "Opportunities in Colorado. This town's getting too civilized for my taste." His eyes met Flynn's. "No hard feelings, Deputy. Business is business." With that, he turned and left, the door swinging shut behind him. Gradually, conversation and music resumed, but Flynn and Zara exchanged a glance of shared understanding. A chapter was closing, the threat that had brought them together finally receding. "Do you think he means it?" Zara asked quietly. "About leaving?" Flynn nodded. "Men like Rutherford can smell change in the air. The frontier is pushing farther west. What worked for him here won't work much longer." "Good riddance," Elliott said, joining them with Sarah on his arm. "Though in a strange way, we owe him for bringing Flynn to us." Sarah smiled. Sometimes good comes from the most unexpected places. Later, as they danced beneath paper lanterns strung from the schoolhouse rafters, Flynn pulled Zara close. "Happy Mrs. O'Malley," incredibly. She rested her head on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "Though I keep thinking about how close we came to missing this, if you hadn't happened to overhear Rutherford that day." "I don't believe it was chance," Flynn said softly. "I think some paths are meant to cross, some stories meant to intertwine. Ours is one of them." As the evening deepened into night, they slipped away from the celebration, walking hand in hand toward the small house behind the jail that would be their first home together. The streets of Willow Creek were quiet, the buildings silver in the moonlight, the mountains a dark silhouette against the star-filled sky. "So what happens now?" Zara asked, leaning into Flynn's side as they walked. "Is this where our story ends, happily ever after?" Flynn laughed, the sound warm in the cool night air. "No, my love, this is where it truly begins." 5 years later, Zara stood on the porch of their new home, watching as Flynn taught their 3-year-old daughter, Lily, to ride her first pony. The little girl's delighted laughter carried across the yard, mingling with the sounds of construction from the expanding town beyond their fence. Willow Creek had grown considerably, transformed from a rough frontier settlement into a proper town with a railway station, several stores, and even a small hotel. Flynn had been elected sheriff 2 years earlier, his reputation for fair but firm justice making him popular with most citizens. Zara's school had flourished, expanding from a single room to a proper building with 3 classrooms and additional teachers. Elliott and Sarah's bookshop had become the cultural center of the community, hosting reading groups and lectures from traveling scholars. Their twin boys, now 2 years old, were the pride of their father's life. The past wasn't entirely forgotten. There had been hard times the winter when influenza swept through the town, claiming several lives. The attempted bank robbery that had left Flynn with a bullet scar on his shoulder. The fire that had destroyed half the main street before it was brought under control. But through it all, the bonds between them had only strengthened. They had heard that Rutherford had indeed moved to Colorado, where his fortunes had initially prospered. But the same pattern of exploitation had eventually caught up with him there. Word reached them last year that he had been found dead in an alley behind one of his saloons, stabbed by an unknown assailant. Flynn had received the news with a grim nod, remarking only that some debts eventually came due, one way or another. As Zara watched her husband and daughter, her hand rested on her swollen belly. Their second child, a son according to the midwife's prediction, was due before winter set in. The future stretched before them, not without challenges but full of promise and possibility. Flynn looked up, catching her eye, and smiled that same smile that had first suggested to her that this dangerous-looking stranger might be worthy of trust. He lifted Lily from the pony and carried her toward the house, the little girl chattering excitedly about her adventure. "Mama." "I rode all by myself," Lily exclaimed as they reached the porch. "I saw, sweetheart, you were very brave." Zara smoothed her daughter's dark curls, so like her father's, Flynn set Lily down and placed his hand over Zara's on her belly. "How are my other two favorite people doing today?" "Restless," Zara replied, smiling as the baby kicked against his palm. "He's going to be as impatient as his father," Flynn laughed, "or as determined as his mother." As the autumn sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, the O'Malley family gathered on their porch. Lily nestled between her parents on the swing Flynn had built, her eyes growing heavy as her excitement gave way to tiredness. "Tell me the story again," she murmured sleepily, "about how you and Mama met." Flynn and Zara exchanged a glance over their daughter's head, silently agreeing on the sanitized version they'd created for young ears. "Well, little one," Flynn began, his voice taking on the cadence of a practiced storyteller, "your mama was in trouble, and I happened to be riding by. I saw how brave she was, standing up to a bad man all by herself, and I knew right then that she was someone special." "And then you saved her," Lily prompted, familiar with her favorite part. "In a way," Flynn acknowledged. "I helped pay a debt so she and your Uncle Elliott could keep their farm. But the truth is, your mama saved me too." "From the bad men?" Lily asked, her eyes drifting closed. "From a lonely life," Flynn corrected gently. "From wandering without purpose. Your mama gave me a home, a family, a reason to be the best man I could be." Zara reached across to take his hand, their fingers intertwining as they had countless times over the years. "And you gave me the freedom to choose my own path, to follow my heart. We saved each other." As Lily fell asleep between them, Flynn and Zara sat in comfortable silence, watching the first stars appear in the darkening sky. The same stars that had witnessed their first meeting, their first kiss, their wedding vows. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't ridden by that day?" Flynn asked softly, careful not to wake their daughter. Zara shook her head. "No, like you said at our wedding, some paths are meant to cross. I believe ours were in this life or another, we would have found each other." Flynn lifted their joined hands to his lips. "I love you, Zara O'Malley, more today than yesterday, less than tomorrow. And I love you," she whispered back. "My cowboy who bought our freedom and stole my heart." As night settled fully over Willow Creek, the little family remained on their porch, surrounded by the life they had built together, a life born from desperation and debt, but transformed by courage and love into something beautiful and enduring. In the quiet darkness, with her husband beside her and their children safe, Zara remembered the desperate woman she had been on that fateful day when Rutherford had threatened everything she held dear. How far she had come since then, how much she had grown. Not just surviving, but truly living, loving deeply, creating freely, building a legacy of kindness and strength for their children to inherit. And it had all begun with a stranger on horseback, a debt paid, and the simple, revolutionary idea that people should be free to choose their own destinies, to follow their hearts toward home.